Welcome, welcome. We've got some folks joining us, so why don't you go ahead and put where you're calling in from today and maybe what you're planting in your garden, or this is a mushroom related topic tonight, so what your favorite mushroom is. If you cook with mushrooms, tell us what you're working with. I'm Sherry, I'm in Geneva, Illinois, and I just cooked with some shiitake that I got at the farmer's market last weekend. So go ahead and put your name and where you're calling from in the chat. I'm not seeing anything pop up yet. Maybe you're typing it in. Sometimes it's a little delayed. So we'll wait and see what everyone types in. Let's see. I'm Sherry Ralish. I'm your host tonight, and we're delighted that you are joining us for tonight's free community conversation, Mushroom Traditions with Fungi Woman, a community conversation with Barbora Batokova and Linda Conroy. In case you're not familiar with Midwest Women's Herbal, we're a women-led and women-empowered organization. We've been producing herbal personal growth events, mushroom events, in person and virtually for over 14 years. To find out more, visit our website, midwestwomensherbal.com. And I'll just check in with everybody here, typing in where they're coming in from. Growing lion's mane on logs and wine caps. Linda was just talking about wine caps from Oklahoma. We've got Naomi from Maplewood, St. Paul, interested in foraging and fungi, love mushrooms. Kate in Rockford, mushrooms are maitake. That's one of my favorites too. And happy for the rain last night so we can get some oysters. So welcome, welcome everybody. I'll continue on as more women come into the classroom here. Let's see. Happy to have other coordinators here joining us tonight. It takes a village, strong village, to produce these types of events. If you're on the Midwest Women's Herbal team, go ahead and give a wave. And if everybody wants to test your reactions, go ahead and click on a heart and give a thumbs up and show some appreciation for our Midwest Women's Herbal team. From our team, I'd like to introduce Courtney Hansen. She'll be handling tech support. So if you find yourself with any glitches, audio, visual glitches, you can send her a direct chat message. You can also send me a direct chat message, or you can send us an email at herbwomen@gmail.com. So thanks to all the coordinators for joining us tonight. We like to begin our events by reading our mission and our vision statement, and I'm going to turn it over to Courtney to do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Sherry. Okay, so the Midwest Women's Herbal mission statement reads, Midwest Women's Herbal provides herbal education and opportunities for transformation. Immersed in the tradition of the village herbalist, grandmothers, mothers, daughters, sisters, and children gather in a co-created village. Through earth-centered healing and nourishment, we ally with the plants that grow around us. From the ground up, we connect to weave ourselves, our families, and our communities into the dynamic spiral of health. And then the Midwest Women's Herbal Vision Statement reads, we live in a world where the feminine is honored and respected, where women stand fully in their power, acknowledging their wisdom, skills, and innate healing abilities.
Thank you, Courtney. In the coming days, we'll be sending you some emails with special offers. We want to make sure you receive them. So just to make sure the emails don't go into spam, you can reply and say hello. And you can also, let's see, add us to your contact list. That's herbwomen@gmail.com. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors who make hosting events like this possible: Moonwise Herbs, Mountain Rose Herbs, Host Defense Mushrooms, Good Land Creative, Herbs on the Side, Driftless Folk School, DNA Hemp, Wisconsin Mycological Society, Frontier Co-op, Herb Farm, Pacific Botanicals, and Natural Awakenings Magazine. If you're interested in learning about sponsorship opportunities, visit midwestwomensherbal.com, and Courtney will be popping all those links into the chat for easy access. We're super thrilled to announce registration is open for our 9th annual Midwest Mycelium Mysteries. We just had our Midwest Women's Herbal Conference, so that's still fresh in my mind. So Mycelium Mysteries is a women's mushroom conference, and you can join us for this transformative weekend where fungi and the feminine meet. It will be held September 19th through the 21st at Camp Helen Brockman in Almond, Wisconsin. In addition to the main conference, there's a number of pre-conference activities that you can join us for early in the week. At Midwest Women's Herbal, we believe learning should be accessible year-round. We bring a variety of virtual learning experiences directly to you. The Herb Women Classroom, another virtual learning opportunity, provides a rich selection of on-demand workshops that you can enjoy all year long. Whether you're looking to explore new topics through our expertly crafted courses or revisit past workshops from our conference recording packages, there's always something new to learn. The Herb Women Community Membership was launched several months ago and includes a variety of pricing levels that meet different budgets and desired commitment of study, including a free membership. Paid membership levels include monthly workshop recordings, quarterly course modules, and even a registration for the In Our Own Hands Women's Wellness Series that's held each winter. To find out more, visit our website, herbwomenclassroom.com. The Herb Women Classroom course modules and some community membership levels come with a monthly mentoring session. That's a live Zoom session with our very own herbal educator, Linda Conroy. Next month, Linda will present Stress Less Botanicals, followed by a Q&A. So please email us at herbwomengmail.com if you're part of the community membership to see if you're eligible to join us for that Q&A session. And if you have any questions about that, we'd love to see you all there. The 2025 Midwest Women's Herbal Conference concluded just a few short weeks ago. We're grateful to our special guest and keynote speaker, Robin Wall-Kimmerer, longtime teacher Cornelia Cho, and elder herbalist Gail Faith Edwards for their contribution and presence, as well as all of the presenters that attended. We'd like to extend a special thank you to everyone else that attended, and we'll publish the full conference recording package in the next couple of weeks. Our guest, Barbora Batokova, will be introduced in a few moments. In the meantime, I'd like to share at the end of tonight's conversation, we have 4 exciting giveaways. We're going to give away a Mycelium Mysteries apron, Fungal Fundamentals module that's in the Herb Women Classroom, a signed copy of Barbora's book, Hunting Mushrooms, How to Safely Identify, Forage, and Cook Wild Fungi, and a registration to Mycelium Mysteries. You have to stay till the end to be eligible, so we hope you stick around. For tonight's conversation, please keep the questions and comments in the chat focused on tonight's topic. If any resources, links, websites are mentioned, we'll keep track of those. We'll pop them in the chat as we go along, and we will also include those in a follow-up email in the coming days, so you don't have to worry about missing out on anything like that. At this time, I'm honored to introduce Linda Conroy, visionary and founder of Midwest Women's Herbal and owner of Moonwise Herbs. Linda is a bioregional herbalist who's been practicing and teaching herbalism for over 30 years. Linda offers in-person apprenticeships, virtual apprenticeships. She teaches a number of classrooms or a number of workshops and different activities. So be sure to check out moonwiseherbs.com for her latest events. There's a calendar there you can take a look at. I'm super grateful to have spent several years with Linda as an apprentice and an intern. I spent 3 years with her, and I've known her, gosh, over 10 years from first attending the Midwest Women's Herbal Conference. And I know that from our team and from myself, we're really grateful, Linda, for your presence, your commitment to hosting these events and supporting women. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Shari, and thank you for holding space here and hosting. And thank you, Courtney, for reading our vision and mission and putting links in the classroom. And to all the other team members who are here. It's really great I see some people who are on our team who are here, and super grateful. And super excited that the Midwest Women's Herbal next year will be our 15th anniversary. And so we'll have lots of special events going on next year, extra special, even though all our events are certainly special. So I am super excited to be here tonight and having a community conversation with Barbara Batokova. And I wanted to just say a couple things. I haven't met Barbara in person, but will in September, which I'm super excited about. And we've had a couple Zoom conversations, which have been really enjoyable. And it's always enjoyable to talk to people who are passionate about mushrooms, and especially women who are passionate about mushrooms. When I started the Mycelium Mysteries conference, next year will be 10 years. This is the ninth year. I was looking for women mycologists who were out there teaching and doing things. And I remember typing in the grandmother of mushrooms like 10 years ago, and not a whole lot showed up on the internet. And now I'm seeing a lot more women out there. And so when I was looking around and I purchased books for my bookstore that I host at the conferences, and at one point I found Barbara's book last year that was released in 2024 called Hunting Mushrooms: How to Safely Identify, Forage, and Cook with Wild Fungi, and started offering the book. And then when we were looking for somebody to present this year, I thought of her and thought, oh, I'd love to have her come to the Mycelium Mysteries conference. And then I started doing some reading about her background, and honestly, almost came to tears reading about her experience growing up in the Czech Republic, harvesting mushrooms with her grandmother and her family, and how special that was to her. And if you look on her website at her bio, there are pictures of her with her grandma and her family, and it's really it's heartening, and it brought me to tears partly because I didn't have that experience, and I feel like it's a very rich experience that we can learn a lot from, and that sharing that is really special. So I really appreciate, Barbara, that you have written your book and that you're willing to come here and share your journey and talk to us about your experience changing locations, moving to a different country, and so I'm really excited to talk to you about all of these things. So welcome to the community conversation.
Well, wow, thank you so much for having me. And what a great introduction. Thank you. And it's always really interesting to hear other people kind of talk about your experience and how they kind of perceive it. And it's just such a beautiful reflection because sometimes we forget how special we might have had it. And so thank you for reminding me of that. And I'm tearing up right now. So it's just, it really is very special, and mushrooms hold a special place in my heart. So I'm excited to talk to you today. I'm super excited about coming to the conference. It sounds like it's going to be a very, very special event, and I'm sure we'll dig into that. So thank you so much for having me.
So as I was thinking about tonight and some of the the couple conversations that we have had, I one of the first things that I have to say, I was thinking, I don't know how to say mushroom in a lot of other languages. And I was wondering, and I thought I want to start to learn how to say mushroom in other languages. So I'm wondering if you could tell us how to say mushroom in Czech.
Yeah, so mushrooms in Czech are called houby. It's Houby. That's the plural, and houba means one mushroom. So that's Houba. Yeah,
Mm. Hoba, and say the plural.
houby.
Hobe.
It's Houby. Yes,
Oh, okay.
houby.
Hobe. Okay.
Yeah, Czech
Thank you.
is a very hard language. It's one of the hardest languages you could possibly try to learn. There's more exceptions than rules. And it is actually an interesting segue because I was thinking about this as I was preparing my presentation for September and why kind of mushrooms are so intertwined in the Czech culture. And one of the things that is not very common, so you know how every mushroom has a scientific binomial. So that's what we go with, Boletus edulis. And in English, that is the scientific name. That's Boletus edulis. And then we have common names like King Boletes or Porcini, Seps, whatever it is. But in Czech, we also have a Czech scientific binomial. So instead of, just Boletus edulis, which is the Latin binomial, we have Hřib smrkový. And then we also just have a common name, which is Pravák. So there's just even this interconnection of just kind of language just signifies kind of the importance of mushrooms and hobby in the Czech culture.
That's so interesting because certainly, a lot of places have lost their connection, especially here in North America, to mushrooms. There was a gap in the interest and the gap in, traditions. And so it's interesting that, if you have a lot of language for something, it usually indicates that it is well integrated into the culture.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's really fascinating. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about your transition from going from, being embedded in a mushroom culture to not, then to
Mhm. Yeah.
reintegrating mushrooms here as you moved here to the United
Yeah.
States?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in South Bohemia, which is a region in the south of the Czech Republic. My family sort of had an apartment in the city, but our ancestral home is in the country. And so that's where we as a family would spend summers and then every weekend. And so it was really a second home. And my grandma would spend a lot of time there, obviously gardening and doing all sorts of, preserving fruits and collecting herbs and making sort of herbal tea from the herbs collected around. And then, of course, going mushroom hunting. And so that is something that I have spent a lot of time with her doing. So whether it was in the garden or we would go into the woods and pick mushrooms, but picking mushrooms has always been like a family event. It's sort of, there was always a lot of work at the summer house. There was always something to be done, fix, cut the grass, weed the garden or whatever, water the garden. But when mushrooms were out, when the weather was good, there were rains and it was warm enough, everywhere, like everything stopped and we would all go into the woods as a family and we would pick mushrooms and grandma would sort of teach us which ones were edible and which ones, were not edible and which ones were toxic. So a lot of my mushroom knowledge sort of comes from her. And that's why, I'm very comfortable eating Amanita rubescens, for example, because that is something that I have just known from, early on. But it was just special time with her in the woods. And then, as I grew up, I, started to go to school. And then, yes, summers were still in the Czech Republic, but I ended up going to college in the US because I wanted to learn English, and it was something that I just somehow always wanted to do. So I ended up going to college in the US. And then, of course, at that point, everything sort of was focused around my career and studying. And I studied journalism and writing and photography in my undergrad. And then, went to grad school, moved to Pittsburgh and became a designer, studied design thinking, human-centered design. And everything was about that because I was trying to stay in the United States. And so I really had to focus on being very good at what I do, because eventually I wanted to apply for a green card so that I could stay in the United States. And then when I sort of, fast forward, I sort of achieved like a good spot in my career, became a UX manager, and sort of the political situation kind of was very difficult, and I felt very disconnected. I was just kind of like, what am I doing? What is kind of my purpose now that I've kind of achieved something in my career, and now I'm in this sort of country that I don't feel very connected to, despite having sort of my second, friend family over here. And so I did some soul searching, and I ultimately figured out that I really just missed the woods, and I missed the connection to my summer house and to my family there, and the time and the memories and all the activities that we would do there, or I would do when I would still be in college and would go back for the summer. And so I, just was searching for how to replicate that here. So I was like, what can I do to kind of get that grounding again? And I haven't touched my camera in years. My, DSLR, my big camera. And so I took the camera and I started hiking in local parks. I didn't have a car back then. So, I would either take Uber or I would take the bus. And sometimes it would be really funny because the Uber drivers were like, "Are you sure you want to be dropped off here?" And I was like, "Yes, I am sure." Thank you. And I started photographing mushrooms and sort of spending time in the woods again, and just sort of started to learn about mushrooms in Pennsylvania and in North America. And I had a good basis, obviously, from home, because once you kind of train your eye to identifying something, right? Like whether it's plants, leaves, tree bark, mushrooms, then it's a lot easier to kind of start recognizing those different species in a different place because you already have something to build upon. And so I joined the Western Pennsylvania Mushroom Club, and I started my Instagram account where I just started to post my photos and would just write up basically what I learned about that mushroom. And, through my career, I love storytelling. I am an information designer as well. So I love to work with information and kind of packaging it in ways that kind of make sense for people to understand and learn so that the knowledge is useful and usable for them. And, of course, it has to be accompanied by beautiful visuals because then, it's kind of words and visuals and it's a great story. So I started doing that, and it just sort of like took off. Like it really did mushroom overnight almost. And all these people kind of started commenting on my posts and following me. And um, so I just continued doing that. I also joined the Western Pennsylvania Mushroom Club, and I met a lot of great people there, and they taught me so much. They continue to teach me so much. And yeah, I think in like 4 years, I became an identifier, and now I'm actually serving as the president for the club. So it really has been a whirlwind. And oh yeah, and I wrote a book throughout there too, somewhere in there. That happened.
Don't forget that.
That happened too. Which was great, which was great. It was a great experience. And yeah, so that's kind of a long story short, I guess.
I just love hearing how when you started to integrate, your other skill, all of your skills together, you're utilizing them, and bringing the mushrooms into it. It's not like it's a separate thing. And I just love that. I know I work with a lot of apprentice students who are learning about the plants, and they always say, "I'm gonna, reject my old life and start this." And I'm like, "No, you integrate it." So it's just such a beautiful example. You bring what you already, your strengths, and
Mhm.
then you keep you get creative on how to bring that to the world. So that's really beautiful how you've done that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's really great to kind of be able to use your kind of career and then kind of apply it, or your skills that for your job to to do something that you also love. I mean, I love design, product management and stuff and product design, but there's just something special, I think, about applying those skills to something that is just so close to your heart. And I think it just shows. And I think that's why I think a lot of people kind of respond to my posts. And then, I ended up writing the book. So it really is just like, whenever they tell you, it really shows if you do what you love, and it's effortless and you just kind of do it. It's hard work, but it's not hard, I guess, to do.
Right, right. It flows. I mean, it just
Yeah,
comes from
right.
you because, yeah. So, two things that come to mind thinking about you, with your family back in the woods. I know you shared, I don't think you shared the whole story, but you had said that you would be interested in sharing a story about your experience getting lost in the woods with your brother. And
Yeah,
I,
that's a great story.
yeah, I wanted to hear more about that.
Yeah. So, honestly, I feel like I must have been maybe around like 8 or 10 years old, because my brother is 6 years younger than me and he was with me. So, I mean, he obviously was walking at the time and was carrying a basket. So I think maybe he was around 6, maybe I was around 12, but we were definitely little. And we just ended up going to the woods, and when the mushroom season is good, you actually take the potato baskets, not the mushroom baskets. You take the woven baskets that are meant for potatoes, and they are kind of the big ones. It's kind of like what are those called? A lot of people carry them here. I think they're calling them the Ghana woven baskets. Is that what they're called? Yeah, so they're huge. So we each had one of those baskets, and we just started going. We went into the woods, and there was just one king bolete after another, and we just kept piling, and like our baskets were full, and but we like couldn't possibly leave the mushrooms back there, right? So I think I took my jacket off and we started piling mushrooms in there. And then, we came back like all victorious and, just like going on the road, and our parents were already like standing like by like in front of the summer house. Like, I think my dad was like on the way to the woods, just coming us to meet us. And we're like, what? Like, what's going on? They're like, you guys were gone like 4 hours. Like, we thought like something happened. We're like, no, there were just so many mushrooms. Like, we couldn't just leave them there. So, yeah, that's my story with my brother and king boletes and potato baskets.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, it's pretty hilarious.
Well, and I think it's such a common experience when you find abundance that you have to, there's such generosity. I've been, thinking a lot about that this time of year, especially how much wild food in general, and then how the mushrooms start coming, and how generous the earth is, and it's just such a gift. So the other thing I was wondering about is, do you know the history, like your grandmother knew the mushrooms? Did she learn from her
Yeah.
grandmother?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
then,
so this is actually something that I will be touching on in my presentation, in the keynote presentation during the conference. But yes, that's basically it. The knowledge is passed on from generation to generation. And that's how you mainly learn. I mean, yes, you have field guides for, reference and stuff, but I honestly don't remember opening a field guide until I was really sort of started to be interested in mushrooms now later in my life. All of that, you just learned the morphological characteristics and where they grew and when they grew, just by going into the woods all the time and then going to the same woods all the time. So you kind of learn the landscape, the ecology, kind of all the habitat, just by doing and by going with you know, your mom and your grandma and learning from them. And then, you know, you take your nieces, your kids, and then it just continues.
Well, I think some of what I'm hearing in what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you have a level of confidence that I sometimes don't see with people who didn't have that experience, because there's a lot of fear.
Yeah.
And you know, that's such a interesting experience, that when you have that confidence that came from generations of learning, it's
Yeah.
it's really different.
Yeah, and you know, it's not just my confidence. It's like 200 years of confidence from my, you know, grandma and great grandma and like great 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 grandma that were foraging in the same woods. So, yeah, it's really something that I was thinking about when people talk about the red pored, blue staining boletes, right? Those are like the woo, don't eat those. And it's interesting because when I started finding the red mouth boletes here in Pennsylvania, I was like, oh, this is very similar to the red dotted stem bolete, the Neoboletus erythropus, now previously luridiformis. But it wasn't exactly the same. And it took me, I think it took me like 6 years to actually be confident and eat them here. Um, and you know, that was I would say that was pretty cautious, I think, for me too. Um, but you know, it in Pennsylvania, we're not supposed to have any of the, you know, rubroboletus species, but just because nobody has found it here yet doesn't mean it's not here. And so, you know, kind of relying on the fact like, oh, like, well, we don't have these here. It's never been recorded and they're not supposed to be here. You know, climate change and things change and you know, places are getting warmer and or colder or so it changes and you know, the organisms that occupy that space change. So it really does take years, I think, especially for those kind of species that do have those poisonous, toxic lookalikes. Um, and yeah, the Amanita rubescens is definitely one that is probably very dangerous because of its lookalike of Amanita pantherina. So yeah, that is, you got to be confident for sure, and you got to be 100%. So,
Absolutely. So I wanted to I when we were when I asked you how to say mushroom in Czech, it was kind of fun in the chat. We had three different languages. Somebody shared that in German they've heard that it's Pilz, P-I-L-Z.
yep, that's one, and then pilze is more than one. So yeah, that's plural. Yep.
And then in French, champignon,
Nice.
and then in Spanish, hongo. Yeah. So I thought that was or seta is a more general term. So I thought it'd be fun to just say those out loud. Start developing our language. And Huby, Huby in
Mhm.
Slovak,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice. Hello.
Nice. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what you are going to do at the conference. You talked a little bit about your keynote, and I know you're going to talk about ethnomycology, which is what we're talking about. We're talking
Yeah.
about ethnomycology and the relationship to mushrooms. And I know as an herbalist who has jumped ship and really embraced the mushroom. I didn't really jump ship, but crossed over a little bit. Is for me, you know, the healing power of mushrooms and plants. It's the relationship is a big piece of it. I always feel that way. The nourishment. It's a lot about relationship. And so I know you're going to talk about that in your keynote, and I know you're also going to go through the process of making a soup. And I don't, I know you don't want to tell all the ingredients because we want people to come, but are you going to make a soup that is traditional? And maybe could you talk a little bit about how your family prepared mushrooms? Anything unique that stands out?
Yeah, so in the Czech Republic, the whole appeal of mushrooms is primarily culinary. That is sort of why, and it's going to be very obvious once you hear my keynote, hopefully, if you're attending the conference, because mushrooms are just such a key part of that landscape, of that culinary landscape in the Czech Republic. So the soup I will be demoing at the conference is a traditional South Bohemian soup called přivařenka, and it is a creamy mushroom soup with potatoes and eggs and dill. And it is super delicious. And you can prepare it with mushrooms from the store as well. So you don't need sort of, wild mushrooms for that. But it is a great soup to either make with fresh sauteed mushrooms or a lot of times it is prepared with dried boletes. So you kind of make it in the winter as well. And then you just throw some, handful of dried boletes and then you kind of making mushroom broth along the way as well. So it's kind of extra mushroomy if you do that. So I often just like to actually do both. I throw in some dried mushrooms and then I do the fresh ones as well. So that is a very traditional South Bohemian soup. So I know that one from my grandma. It is, I mean, we would probably make that like, I don't know, like at least once a month. But if it was in season, mushrooms were in season, we would, have it a lot. And Czech cuisine is a lot about soups and sauces. So there's a lot of recipes for like various kind of chunky soups. Like there's a potato soup with barley and mushrooms again. That one's not creamy. But again, you can kind of just throw in some handful dried boletes. And then other traditional preparations would actually be what a lot of people would eat sort of coming from the woods. So a typical day, really, if you go mushroom hunting with your family over the weekend, is you go into the woods in the morning. It's very important to be there first, right? Because everybody else is going. So the sooner you can get there, the better. And so you would go into the woods, depending how big your kind of loop is. You might be back, if you're there around 6 a.m., you might be back around 9 or 10. You would probably start cleaning the mushrooms or do some quick lunch. But then in the afternoon, you would make this mushroom and egg scramble, and you would eat that with fresh rye bread, and you would eat that for dinner, which actually is kind of bad, right? Because mushrooms are kind of heavy for to eat for dinner. But that has been the Czech way, and lots, like we've always done it. So that is probably what a lot of people do. And then when you really hit the jackpot in the woods, and sometimes people would go every weekend, you would accumulate a lot of mushrooms. So drying is definitely the preferred way in the Czech Republic. That's kind of the traditional way. And then just canning. We're actually not afraid of botulism. I don't know why. It's not a thing. Like it's like I've never even heard of it until I came to the United States, that you're not supposed to like can just double or triple boil acidic foods like that. But we've always done it. And mushrooms last like that for years. So you would just kind of saute them with butter, oil, and then put them in glass jars and then do a double kind of water bath boil and put them in your pantry.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like it just blew my mind when I actually found out about, like, I was like, what is this about not like what? I've never heard of that. So, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I often can mushrooms in with other things. Or I do pickle them too, but I started putting them in my tomato sauce every year, and I make lots of tomato sauce, because I make my tomato sauce in like August, September when there's lots of mushrooms.
Yep, that's the perfect
And
combo.
yes, it's such a great way to eat them throughout the year. So it's interesting, that to hear you talk about mushrooms and how they're such a part of the culture, because certainly here in the United States, we have lots of young children who are real picky about food, and mushrooms tend to be one that they're not always so friendly to or exposed to, really. And when I started the mushroom conference, a lot of people said to me, I don't like mushrooms. Why would you have a mushroom conference? And I just thought, "Oh, that's like saying you don't like life." If because mushrooms, I mean, yes, they're are a culinary thing, but they're also have all these other applications, how, important they are to the environment and
Yeah,
to health and
mhm,
so many things.
yeah.
So it's so interesting to hear you talk about, growing up eating mushrooms and not having that, oh, I don't like mushrooms reaction. And I think it's mostly because people ate those canned mushy mushrooms.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty gross. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
When you actually yeah, like I feel like a lot of people's minds are just, blown when they taste like different mushrooms than what like comes in the can. And they're like, that's a mushroom. And it's like, yeah, that's one mushroom. I mean,
Hmm.
that's so many other ones. And so yeah, I do think it's largely cultural, right? Like the kids just kind of hear it, they don't see it on the table, they don't see their parents eating it. So it just permeates, and then it just carries over until somehow, you're able to kind of change people's minds about the mushrooms and whether they don't like to eat them, that doesn't really matter. But as organisms, fungi are just, like you say, they're just so amazing, and we wouldn't really be here without them. So
We absolutely would not.
we would not. So
So there was a question, going back to your double boiler.
yeah.
So Mitch was asking, did you mean that you used a double boiler, or is there another method with a canner? So I guess some
No, so
clarification.
I don't use a canner. That's why it's like there's that risk of like that botulism, because basically what we would do, we would just, once you saute the mushrooms in the pan, you would just put them into jars, you would seal them, you would flip them over so the heat from the mushroom would actually seal
Seal.
make the seal. But then you would put them in a pot of water and submerge them, and then you would boil them for like an hour. And then
So
you would
that would be, I would call that water bath canning.
then water bath canning, yes.
Mhm.
So, but I know that actually if there is that, the botulism in there, the the inside of the can, or the not the can, the jar never reaches the necessary temperature with just boiling, and that's why you need to use an actual like machine, and I don't know what that machine is called because I never use it. So like a canner,
Pressure
but a
canner.
pressure canner. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, it's interesting because the concern are botulism spores that might grow in an environment that would foster them.
yeah,
And if you're cooking it, you're likely killing off the botulism spores. And
yeah,
along those lines, I've canned for done water bath canning of a lot of different foods over the years. And I always know when it's bad because the lid pops and it
yeah,
smells
exactly.
bad. So
Yeah,
it's again, it's that back to that concept of trust. Like when you have experience, when I
yeah,
first started canning, I wouldn't have known, but now I notice I've had a couple times when things have gone awry, and I know, and I just
yeah.
toss it out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, you can tell right away because then it won't make that like sound, right? When you open it and you're like, oh, or the lid would literally be so. Yeah, it's
Right, and that's what's happened to me. The lid has
yeah.
bulged, and I'm like, that's not right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so, I also was thinking about when we came on the call tonight before everybody came in, you were talking about having gone foraging recently with your mushroom club, going out on a foray, and that you met a mushroom that you hadn't met before.
Yeah.
And I want to just bring that up because I think, these kind of endeavors, plants and mushrooms, are a lifelong learning opportunity. And it's one of the things that I delight about, that we teach each other. And that's like and I heard you saying that with your mushroom club. Yes, you're teaching and sharing, but you're also learning. And I wonder if you could just speak to that, because I really heard that in what you were saying, and it feels, like that collaborative learning is really important.
Yeah, I think it really is the best way to kind of learn, and especially something that you're planning on eating or sort of using in some way, right? You got to know that you're identifying that 100% so that you're being safe. But yeah, this learning, it's interesting. I'm sure lots of people are familiar with sort of that. I forget, I'm sure it has some name, but it's basically the more you know about the subject, like the more you're aware that you know nothing. And there's like so much more out there, and it's whenever sometimes people talk to me, they're like, "Oh, are you a mycologist?" I was like, I don't think so. I don't think I would call myself that, because that there's definitely people out there that are actual mycologists, and whether they have a degree in it or not doesn't really matter, how you kind of acquire that knowledge. But it's interesting how, yes, I know a lot about mushrooms, but the more I'm learning, it's just like the world expands like exponentially. And now with sort of DNA analysis and the sequencing, it is just a whole new world. And I haven't even gotten into microscopy, I have like my whole mushroom career is like in front of me. Like I haven't even scratched the surface. And that is just like so exciting to me, because there's so much more to learn. And every new place you go with different people, they will know different things, and you explore new things. So it's yeah, it is just it's such an exciting endeavor to kind of be doing, because like it never stops, and there's always more places to see. There's more mushrooms to photograph. There's more mushrooms to taste, um and new people to learn from. So that to me really is just kind of exciting in this exchange of like we each know something, and together we know so much, right? I mean, just communities like iNaturalist, just the vast data there that has been accumulated for living organisms is just a treasure trove of for research and for just documenting the mycodiversity and plant diversity around us. So yeah, it is a very exciting place to be, I think.
I know. I love your enthusiasm and curiosity. Shari has her hand up. Maybe she has a question. Do you have a question, Shari?
It was just a word, Barbara, that you said that I didn't catch. Something croscopy, or it was a field or
Oh, do
something.
you want to
Oh,
explain what that is?
microscopy.
Mm.
Yeah, so in sort of the mushroom world, mycology world, there's different ways of identifying mushrooms, aka the fruiting bodies of fungi. And the most obvious way is by what it looks like, right? So like, does it have a cap? Is it a cup fungus? Is it a polypore? Is it a, does it have a stipe and a cap? Kind of, does it like, what kind of ring does it have? Does it have gills? Does it have pores? Does it have teeth underneath? Like all these morphological characteristics. And then, you would combine that with sort of the habitat and sort of the ecology of the mushroom. So you would kind of pair what it looks like with where it grows. So does it grow on your lawn? Does it grow in the woods under oak? Or does it grow in an old growth hemlock forest? And then you combine that with how the mushroom grows. So does it grow, on the ground? Which would often indicate it is a mycorrhizal mushroom, meaning it makes it is symbiotic with tree roots. So there's an exchange of nutrients. And so the fungus needs that tree, and therefore that's why it grows there. And the tree needs the mushroom. Sort of there's like this exchange of nutrients and stuff. Or does it grow on wood? And if it grows on wood, what kind of wood does it grow on? So that's basically kind of the general and the what a lot of people use to identify mushrooms by. And but then, science uh, allowed us to use a microscope and observe the mushroom under the microscope. So we can look at, the gills, we can look at the spores, and we can look at the size and the shapes of different sort of mushroom tissue under the microscope. And that now gets you to a whole level of certainty, right? Of what you're kind of looking at or what that organism is. And then the next level up from that is you can use some chemical substances to put on the mushrooms, and if there's a reaction, but that's not very common, and it's only applicable to some mushrooms. But now the next, the ultimate level is sequencing the DNA. And that will really tell you what kind of mushroom you're looking at. And that is really for research purposes. And that's how we're finding that, what we probably 200 years ago in North America thought was an Amanita rubescens, aka a blusher. Now with DNA, we sort of know that there's actually 9, potentially more, different species of mushrooms in North America that look like a blusher, the European blusher, but it's actually not the European blusher. The DNA is different, and therefore it's a different species. So the different methods for identifying mushrooms just kind of opens up your world more and more. So yeah, I'm still in the macro, morphology and the habitat, and I have yet to get my first microscope. So I'm excited about that.
And there'll always be a need for field identification.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. But
As fun as
it's kind of like once you like, you kind of want to know more, right? You're kind of nearing that edge, and you kind of want to make that leap to the next level because it's exciting. And I like to put things in buckets. I don't like the fact that I can't tell this is like this particular species because there's like 3 different ones and we need microscopy for it. So I kind of want to be able to put it in the right bucket. And so yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, it is exciting. There's always new information and new insights to be had for sure. Absolutely. So, I guess we're kind of nearing toward the end of our hour, and I wanted to know, open it up if anybody has any burning questions, please either raise your hand or put it in the chat. And then while we're seeing if anybody does or doesn't have questions, Barbara, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you were hoping to talk about or to touch on tonight?
No, I mean, I could talk about mushrooms forever, but nothing really kind of comes to mind in the moment. Yeah, I mean, I definitely have some mushroom hunting tips and tricks. But
Do you want to tell us, like, if somebody were to, purchase your book, like, what are a couple things they would get that would be really helpful to them that's in the book?
yeah, so my book is really it's both for sort of absolute beginners, but also just general kind of mycophiles that are interested in the subject, because there is some of that newest research, and it can get a little a little technical. But if you don't want that, then the book just kind of introduces you to some of the major mushroom groups out there, so that when you are in the woods, you you can look at a mushroom and you'll be able to kind of tell, let's say, a bolete from a puffball from an amanita. That's kind of the goal for the book as well, so that you kind of get to learn the general characteristics of these major mushroom groups that are grouped based on what they look like. So that was a very it's a very useful way of getting into mushrooms. It's, kind of what Gary Linkoff kind of pioneered a while back. So it just kind of continues that as well. And then there's a whole bunch of recipes. Most of them are Czech inspired, and of course, there's awesome photos to kind of help you look at it. And one of the things that's unique, I think, about my book is that I also show you the lookalike right there. So you don't have to like flip through or go to a different thing. It's kind of like, this is your main mushroom profile for learning chicken of the woods and how to tell it from, let's say, Faulos or something like a close lookalike. So, and it's right there. So that's kind of, I think, what's unique in the book and kind of really helpful, because that's what I found. They always tell you like, well, compare this species, but it's like, but it's not in the book. And, so I really tried to pick photos that would illustrate kind of the differences, but sometimes also to show how similar it can be as
That
well.
is so helpful
Yeah.
because when you see things right next to each other, you can really notice the nuances and the differences.
Yeah, and there's a really good guide for identifying turkey tails with pictures, and like a very per bullet you can compare, like one bullet, there's like 5 species that I compare, and each bullet kind of corresponds to the first bullet of the next species, so you can be like, oh, like this. So that's really helpful. I thought that was really helpful for me when I was kind of learning, and it was nowhere out there, and I was like, this needs to be there, because a lot of ways it's just these mushroom keys, but they're not really kind of helpful, or they don't have pictures and stuff, and so yeah. And the same with the velvet shanks, which are popular winter mushrooms, but they have toxic lookalikes, so there's a special section on that as well.
So you're kind of touching on it, but somebody had asked about advice for beginners with little experience. Do you have any like little tips that you could, just a couple
Yeah,
real quick?
I think if you're a beginner, definitely get out there, right? Go often, and go to the same places, because you will start to learn that environment, and it'll kind of become your own little kind of lab to kind of observe like what is happening in that place, and how weather kind of affects things, and how like you start to associate certain plants with certain mushrooms, and if this plant then comes up, then maybe 3 weeks later there will be morels, or there will be chanterelles, or like you will start to notice these patterns. And that's really the key for like mushroom hunting, to kind of learning these, because yes, mushrooms are everywhere, but it's also important to know where you can expect them. That's like a big part of mushroom hunting, because if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you're not going to find any. So that's really important. And as for beginners, so just get out there and start observing, start photographing, taking notes, putting stuff on iNaturalist, keeping your list, and engaging with the community. But, you know, the best advice is join a local mushroom club if there is one. And if you don't have one, then, you know, get active on INAT, and start looking at what other people are posting around your area and what those things are being identified as. So you can learn a lot that way. But obviously in person, in situ, from experts, local mushroom club is your best way.
It really is. And I love what you're saying about going out and looking and photographing. I always tell people don't go out with the intent to eat,
No,
because you're probably, if you don't know much, you're probably going to convince yourself something is edible when it's not. So don't do that. Just go out and really, really observe. So I love what you're saying. I think that's so helpful. And then eventually you'll, feel more comfortable as you get to know the mushrooms in your environment. Absolutely.
there's definitely few species that actually I mentioned in the book that are like pretty foolproof, if you study up, right, and know what you're looking for, and you find it, then, you know, maybe in your first few months of kind of trying to do this, you'll be able to take that with you and cook it. But yeah, a lot of the other mushrooms will take some time.
Well, I always say giant puffballs. There's nothing that's a soccer ball size.
That's
Uh,
true, yeah. They're also not that amazing though, so it's kind of like, I don't know, yeah.
Well, if you get, actually, I like them if you get them when they're very firm,
Yes.
and then I like to make puffball parmesan. So
Ooh, yeah, that's true.
actually, that
Yeah.
is, they take on the flavor of what you cook them with, and if they're old, they're terrible. So,
Nice.
somebody else was asking, so maybe we'll take this one last question. If you have any tips for working with mushrooms and kids.
Kids, well, you know, definitely take them to the woods and encourage their learning for sure. I don't know if like you can make that any more specific, whoever asked that question. Um, like kids are very curious, and so they'll and they're also closer to the ground, so they see a lot better. And they can get into like places where maybe you can't. So that's really good. Um yeah, I don't know what I would say with kids. I mean, just, you know, if take them to the woods. I mean, that's how I learned. Yeah.
Right, just introduce them and engage. I actually was invited to go into a classroom in this summer to work with kids, and they were asking me what I might do, and I said, I would take them into the woods. I said, but I also would do a art project with doing spore prints with art and making some art projects so that they would engage and be able to see the spore prints and do
Oh yeah.
something with the
Yeah.
mushrooms.
Like
So,
if you're talking like education, academia kind of wise, like there's a whole bunch of stuff to do with mushrooms, or just kind of activities like, you know, mushroom bingo, or we have this like game called Bexeso, which is like you're matching pairs of mushrooms, which is really cool for kind of trying to recognize like similar ones. So yeah, there's lots of cool stuff out there.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And then Gina says there are several microscopes that work with cell phones, and she wonders if they might be good field tools. It's not
Oh.
really a question, but um, kind of like a curiosity. So, yeah. All
Oh,
right. Well, I think we're gonna go ahead and close for the evening. If you want to come out and spend time with Barbara and myself and the other crew, we have so many amazing workshops on a lot of the topics we talked about tonight at the Mycelium Mysteries conference in September. I'm so excited, Barbara, that you're going to come here and that we'll be learning together. It's just
yeah.
super exciting to.
I am too. I've never been to Wisconsin either, so you know, new stuff to discover, new people to meet, and new connections to be made. So it's I'm really excited, and thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm gonna hand it over to Shari because she's gonna do our giveaways. So let's see who is gonna win all of our wonderful giveaways tonight.
All
Wow.
right, thank you. And Barbara, just so you know, there's a woman that's bringing microscopes and she's teaching 2 workshops. So you'll be able to utilize a microscope. We've
Great.
got forays that people will take you out into the field. For those that want to attend, we have beginner ID, we have advanced ID, we have crafts with mushrooms. So we really do have a wide range of topics, and we're going to be posting those on the website very, very soon if they're not up there already today. So if you've enjoyed this community conversation, we have another one coming up on July 15th with Ingrid Dowdert, and she teaches a lot at the Mycelium Mysteries about cultivation. She talks about shiitake. Linda referenced her earlier. And that is on July 15th, and the topic is mushrooms in the garden. So thank you, Linda and Barbara, for the conversation tonight, and everybody for your engagement. And for the winners, here's what we'd like you to do. Send us an email at herbwomen@gmail.com, and Courtney's going to pop that email there. She's already done it. It's in the chat for you. So when you're selected, please go ahead and send us an email, and she's going to write your name down too. And so just tell us what item you want. If you've been sitting with your camera off, now would be a good time to turn it on. And I'm going to pick the winner for the mushroom apron. So let's take a peek here. Oh, look at all these beautiful faces. This is so great. All right. How about Emerson B? We're going to go ahead and give Emerson B the mushroom apron. I have one of them. I really love it. And I meant to be wearing mine tonight and it slipped my mind, but I'm going to have it next time. And then we're going to pick the winner of Fungal Fundamentals module. So the Fungal Fundamentals will have some of these basic IDs. There's tips and tricks about what books you want to take with you, the type of basket. And I think Bolga baskets are the ones from Ghana, Barbara, I think that you were touching on. So Bolga baskets, there's all kinds of things with the tips and tricks in the Fungal Fundamentals module. So this is an online module that you can purchase from our Herb Women classroom. And I have Amanda Reagan. So you've got the Fungal Fundamentals workshop from the Herb Women classroom. If you like that one, you can go on to part 2. That's also in the classroom. All right, so this is for Barbara's signed book. And just to remind everybody, send us an email at herbwomen@gmail.com. So let's see here. All right, I'm trying to avoid the coordinators because I see all of you're all popping up to me. I don't want to, that's not fair. I see Karen. There's Karen, yeah, there, go ahead. You're giving me a wave there. So Karen, you've won Barbara's book. So please send us an email to herbwomen@gmail.com, and she's going to sign it for you and send it out. So, okay. Now, the grand finale, the pièce de résistance, right? So what we'd like you to do, I'll give you a minute here. Find at the bottom of your toolbar, there's a little heart that says react. If you are able to attend the Mycelium Mysteries, please raise your hand. If you can't find that button, go ahead and put your hand up. That'll work too. All right. All right, now I'm seeing, okay, I'm going to clear that. So raising the hands here. So, all right. So we want to make sure that we're going to give this away to somebody that can attend. All right. And let's see. I see. How about Mitch? Mitch Mitchell. Yeah, there you go. Mitch Mitchell.
Thank you so much, but I've already purchased a registration.
Lower your
So pass
hand.
it to somebody who hasn't.
Well, thank you for telling us. All right. Okay. I see R in Fairfield, Ohio. What's your first name there, R?
My name is Ruthie. Yay!
Right. There we go.
Thank you.
All right. And so we'll be sending out some coupons. We have our early bird registration ends July 1st. So if you want to get into Mycelium Mysteries, the best pricing is now. And we're going to send you links and all the important information to sign up for that with a follow-up email. We'll send a thank you email tonight, and then we've got a couple more going. So, all right. So Mycelium Mysteries takes place September 19th, 20th, and 21st. There's a day and a half pre-conference where you can learn to dye with Alyssa Allen. There's 3-hour workshops, and there's an all-day foray that you can attend. So those take place before the main conference. And then, of course, join us for that whole weekend. Past community conversations like this one are in the Herb Women classroom. If you sign up for the free membership, you'll get an automatic notice when these pop up. And thank you again, everybody, for attending tonight. If you want to go ahead and unmute and share some words of gratitude before you take off, that'd be great. So thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night,
Great to see
everybody.
so many faces.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.